Gemara Pesachim Daf Lamed Vav continues the items that you're allowed to make matzah out of. We begin by discussing whether you could be yeti with matzah of tevel. Then we move on to whether you could be yeti with matzah of meiser sheni. Finally, we conclude whether you could be yeti with matzah of bikurim. Within the discussion, we bring out the pasuk of lechem oini three different ways: whether it refers to poor man's bread, whether it refers to bread that you say the Haggadah over it, whether it refers to an item that you have to be able to eat baninos, which means when you're not bisimcha, when one is mourning over the loss of a relative before the burial. We're going to discuss milchik bread and the heter when you're allowed to make milchik bread. And finally, we're going to discuss bikurim, whether one could be yetzi with bikurim or not, and whether an einin, I should say, could eat bikurim. We begin by Lamed Heyam and B. Says the Gemara, one would have thought you could be yetzi with tavel, but we learn out from the fact that the Torah says leiseichel of chametz, that the only time you could be yetzi yechiva matzah is something that the sole potential isser is chametz, but something that has a different isser on it, you cannot be yetzi yechiva matzah. So this item, since there's the isser of tevel, you cannot be yetzi yechiva matzah. Says the Gemara, but it's Pesach. Why is there no isser of matzah on top of the isser of tevel? Says the Gemara, the opinion of Rav Shimon that says ein Isser chal on Isser. The Gemara continues and says, but Ravina says no, we can even go with the opinion of the Rabbanan that says that Isser would be chal on Isser. But the Gemara concludes that's not going to work because it's not only the Isser of Tevel doesn't say in the Torah, and therefore we must go with the original Torahs that we're going with Rav Sheshes, which goes with Rav Shimon. Then we continue. What could be yotze with the matzah? Are you allowed to be yotze with matzah of meiser sheni? Says the Gemara, no. It says lechem aini, which comes to teach us aini with an ayin. We're going to have different ways. The kri, the ksiv. Is there no vav? Is it like an aleph of aninas? Says the Gemara, that's to be something they could eat when you're an ayin, and meiser sheni is not something they eat when you're an ayin because you have to be simcha. This is machlekes Reisek Lili. Rav Akiva comes along and says, no, we have an extra josh of matzahs. And what is the pasuk of matzahs lechem oini comes to exclude matzah ashira, that if it's made with wine, oil, and honey, then you cannot use that as matzah. Then the Gemara says, according to Rav Akiva, what does he do with the pasuk? He learns like Shmuel that it's bread that you said a lot of words on it, that you said the Haggadah on it. We asked the question, Rav Akiva holds you can't be yetz with matzah ashira, but Rav Akiva was next to these great Jews, Rav Elazar and Rav Gamliel, and he made this matzah, and seemingly they ate it. The Gemara says, no, that's not a question. Rav Lazar and Rav Yeshua, that's not a question. Why? Because that was on the other days of Yantif, the din that you cannot be eating matzah shira solely on the first night of Pesach. We ask, but what about the fact that seemingly said that you can use milchik bread? And we answer two different answers. Either that wasn't the story was it was bread made out of honey, or the answer was when you make a small quantity of bread or bread in a different form like the ox king tura, that is the heter. We continue with, are you allowed to make bread with lukewarm water? It sounds like you're not allowed in the Mishnah, but menachis you are allowed to. Says the Gemara, menachis, the carbon was made by Gehanim and in the place of Gehanim, that's why it's allowed, whereas the kneading of the matzah is made by every Jew, so it's not allowed. And we also learn out that to soak the kernels as well will not be allowed because that is not done inside the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Gemara, what about the matzah of bikurim? And we say no, because the Torah says has to be matzahs, be something that you eat everywhere. Bikurim is not something that you eat everywhere. That's the first opinion of Reisek Lili. Rav Akiva says no. You know what? You can't be yetz with matzah of bikurim. The reason is because it equates matzah to maror, and it has to be something that you can make bikurim out of. And bikurim cannot be made out of maror, and therefore that will not be able to be yetz yachiv. We thought that Rav Akiva learns out from matzahs, and the Gemara proves that Rav Akiva was chayzer. We move along, the Rav Yisek Lili learns out from lechem oini. Says the Gemara, why doesn't he say that that's the reason why you cannot use bikurim, because then that's that you can eat besimcha? Says the Gemara, because Yisek Lili really holds like Rav Shimon. The Rav Shimon holds that an einin could yes eat bikurim. Why do the Chachamim hold an einin cannot eat bikurim? Because the Chachamim equate it to meiser, whereas Rav Shimon equates it to truma. That is Gemara and Pesachim Daf Lamed Vav.